The main character had been a commoner mage in his previous life. In that world, commoners were unable to use magic proficiently. Despite his tremendous efforts, he had achieved no results. Meanwhile, the nobles were fortunately blessed with the ability to wield magic powerfully before ending the protagonist's life. A nobleman had allowed him to demonstrate magic one last time. When the nobleman saw that the boy could only create a tiny flame, he mocked him for his incompetence. Incidentally, he told the boy about the teachings of William, the father of magic, explaining that those not blessed by heaven with noble bloodlines or talent could never progress, no matter how hard they tried. After uttering those words, the nobleman created a massive flame that completely incinerated the protagonist, although he had logged out of that world. The protagonist admitted to himself that the noble's magic was truly amazing and wished he could learn more to master such spells. Fortunately, the gods answered his wish. He was reincarnated as a prince named Lloyd. When Lloyd opened his eyes in his new life, he thought the maids around him were giants. Panic, he immediately used fire magic to attack them, creating a huge hole in the room. Witnessing Lloyd's terrifying power, the maids could only gape in astonishment. Meanwhile, the citizens of the kingdom of Salome received the news about the birth of the seventh prince. 10 years later, the kingdom of Salome had changed dramatically, and Lloyd had grown into a prince who was known for always running away from his maids. It turned out that Lloyd wanted to research magic, but the maids insisted he learn hunting instead. Whenever Lloyd met people in the palace, he always asked them to keep his location secret from the maids. Lloyd was constantly trying to run away, but the ministers could only sigh helplessly, unable to advise him effectively. They explained that, because Lloyd was much younger than the other princes, he did not have the right to succeed to the throne. However, since birth, Lloyd had been remarkably fluent in language and able to read magical texts. Many believed he was the reincarnation of William, the legendary father of magic. In reality, Lloyd's previous life had been that of a commoner in the kingdom. Although he had been reincarnated as the seventh prince, he still retained memories from his former life. Now, despite his royal status and the respect he commanded from the people, Lloyd maintained his previous life's focus on deeply studying magic. The library, filled with countless magical books, was where he felt most at home. Whenever he went to the library, Lloyd always showed extreme excitement. Yet the maid Shifa invariably found him there. On this occasion, she caught him again and promptly dragged him outside to practice swordsmanship, as was their usual routine. Lloyd believed that, since he was not in line for succession, he did not need to learn swordsmanship. But Shifa insisted that as a member of the royal family, mastering the sword was essential. She had been teaching him for 3 years and considered this her life's purpose. Realizing he could not escape, Lloyd decided to practice more diligently so that he could quickly return to reading his books. As they continued to wield wooden swords and charge at each other, Lloyd noticed that Shifa always held back during their practice. At the same time, Lloyd had developed a spell that could perfectly mimic Shifa's movements. Determined to gain an advantage, Lloyd resolved to cheat by copying her moves exactly. Lloyd faced Shifa, who had clear advantages in physical strength, power, and height, which continuously pushed him backward. To overcome these disparities, Lloyd used a growth spell that enlarged both his sword and muscles. This spell also caused him to float in the air, making their heights equal. By compensating for all the differences with Shifa, Lloyd was able to make their battle evenly matched. He moved just as Shifa did, unleashing sword techniques identical to hers. After some time in combat, Lloyd believed that Shifa had been drawn into his fighting style. Confident in this, he decided to stop the copying spell and launch a surprise attack. However, Shifa blocked his strike and then tapped his sword, accusing him of cheating. She had seen through Lloyd's tricks to floating, and the enlarged sword hand was amazed by his ability to activate 2 spells simultaneously. What Shifa did not realize was that Lloyd could actually activate 4 spells at once. After their practice, Shifa dragged Lloyd and the other maids into the bathroom, where he overheard a story about a demon sealed inside a forbidden book beneath the castle. That night, Driven by curiosity, Lloyd sneaked into the castle to explore what secrets it might hold. He used a wind-based invisibility spell to bypass the guards. This cloaking spell manipulated airflow and reflected light, rendering him invisible even when standing right in front of someone. When Lloyd overheard the guards mention the presence of a very powerful demon sealed beneath the castle, he felt an intense excitement about the adventure that awaited him. According to the guards, the entrance was protected by an extremely powerful barrier erected by 10 mages. However, Lloyd had broken that seemingly formidable seal in just a few seconds. Although he had lived in the palace for 10 years, it was only now that he discovered the mysterious library. For Lloyd, this place was nothing short of paradise, a dream come true for a boy who loved researching magic. As Lloyd settled down to open a book, another volume suddenly flew up into the air. From within it echoed a mischievous laugh belonging to the demon Grima. The demon thanked Lloyd for breaking the seal on the door earlier and demanded that he break another seal inside the book to allow it to escape. To reward Lloyd, the forbidden book demon promised to give him vast amounts of gold and silver. But Lloyd knew well enough that Grima's offer was a trick. The demon had previously used a spell to turn stone into gold to deceive him. Realizing that the deceitful demon could not be allowed to roam free, Lloyd resolved to lock it up permanently. At this point, Grima grew very frightened and promised that it would no longer do evil. It even claimed it could teach Lloyd ancient spells that he had never known before. Upon hearing this, young Lloyd was as happy as if it were a festival, and eagerly asked if it was true. Grima, pleased to have persuaded Lloyd to open the seal, smiled. Lloyd then performed a key-shaped spell that caused the seal to explode. As soon as the demon was freed, it demonstrated an ancient technique by attacking Lloyd. The first move, called Dark Blast Cannon, created a dark explosion that engulfed him. The space around the room shook violently, and Grima believed Lloyd had evaporated after the attack. But Lloyd had survived. Lloyd created a spherical barrier to protect himself. He praised the Dark Blast Cannon as a very powerful technique and expressed a strong desire to learn more about it. Upon hearing this, Grima grew frustrated and began frantically firing dark blast cannons at Lloyd, however. Despite repeatedly launching attacks until its arms grew tired, Grima was unable to penetrate Lloyd's barrier. Meanwhile, Lloyd observed Grima's method of casting the Dark Blast Cannon, carefully studying how to create the technique himself. He even extended a finger outside the barrier to test the damage inflicted by the Dark Blast Cannon. Seeing the rotating spell forming on Lloyd's hand for the first time, Grima experienced both pain and a hidden excitement. Curious, Grima asked Lloyd to unleash his strongest Dark Blast Cannon to determine whether there was anything unique about it. In response, out of anger, Grima split its muzzle into two and combined incantations before firing a spiral-shaped Dark Blast Cannon toward Lloyd's barrier. This allowed Lloyd to gain new insights into how two-headed demons combine incantations. Despite the intensity of the attack and Grima being drenched in sweat, Lloyd's barrier remained unbroken. It became clear that all the previous techniques cast by Grima were simply for Lloyd's learning and had no real effect. Feeling ashamed, Grima attempted to escape the room, but Lloyd had already created an underground barrier to prevent its flight. Lloyd explained that he had previously cast magic recklessly, often causing unintended destruction. Therefore, he had learned to create strong barriers to prevent such situations. After mastering offensive magic, he wanted to know whether Grima possessed any defensive spells. To test this, Lloyd cast a technique called Flame Sphere to roast the demon trapped inside the barrier, thinking that the demon might have other interesting techniques. Lloyd remained observant and ready for whatever came next. Grima lay face down, smoke rising from its mouth, and from that moment on, it no longer dared to disrespect Lloyd, even if it were paid to do so. After restoring the room to its original state, Lloyd left the demon staring in amazement, having witnessed Lloyd's terrifying power firsthand. Grima now referred to him as Master. Grima also admitted that Lloyd's fire spell had been truly painful. Curious to test his magic further, Lloyd decided to increase the intensity to see if the demon could withstand it. Believing that Lloyd intended to kill him, Grima knelt down and surrendered, promising never to disobey him again. Trembling, the demon even asked for Lloyd's permission to become his pet. Lloyd agreed immediately and requested that Grima reduce its size to avoid drawing unwanted attention. Complying, the demon transformed into a mischievous-looking spiritual beast. Despite accepting its new role as Lloyd's pet, Grima remained scheming and planned to seize control of Lloyd's mind whenever he was distracted. However, upon witnessing Lloyd's overwhelming magical power again, it abandoned that idea completely. From that point forward, the demon insisted that Lloyd call it by a new name, Creo. Meanwhile, Lloyd's older brother, the second prince, Amber, had prepared neat attire and was on his way to visit Lloyd. At that time, Lloyd was deeply engrossed in studying magic books, but sensed someone approaching. Quickly, he instructed Creo to hide to avoid detection. Soon after, Amber arrived and invited Lloyd to practice magic together. The two then proceeded to the training area within the royal palace. Lloyd demonstrated his ability to cast precise magic, which impressed the servant girls greatly. He also knew that Amber was an exceptional prince, rumored to be the successor to the throne. Occasionally, Amber would invite Lloyd to practice magic together for fun. Since Lloyd had no interest in competing for the throne, he and Amber had grown quite close. Lloyd's sole desire was the freedom to research magic. When it was Lloyd's turn during one practice session, he decided to push himself harder than usual. He unleashed a fireball that bent its trajectory yet still hit the target. Not satisfied with a single display, Lloyd demonstrated many more shots, each hitting different targets. Despite his flawless magical accuracy, the ministers refused to acknowledge his talent. However, Lloyd was unfazed by their casual slander. All he cared about was satisfying his passion for magic. Amber understood Lloyd's mindset, and after the session, told him to rest. Lloyd was delighted by this, as it meant he could freely continue practicing magical techniques. His first experiment was to try Grima's dual incantation ability. Grima immediately stopped him, pointing out that Lloyd only had one mouth. Lloyd responded by telling Grima to enter his hand to become his second mouth, a strange trick that left Grima speechless. Lloyd then asked Grima to help him cast a fireball. As Grima recited the incantation, Lloyd mumbled along. The result was a magical overload, and Grima failed to cast the spell. It turned out that Lloyd had recited 100 incantations continuously, testing whether he could activate them. Simultaneously, Grima was frustrated and called Lloyd a madman, explaining that no one in the world could perform such a feat. After some thought, Lloyd decided to control Grima's mouth directly. From then on, whatever Lloyd said had to be repeated by Grima without protest. Lloyd proceeded to incant 2 high-level fire and water spells simultaneously, making Grima's mouth tire. He even intertwined the 2 spells together and combined them with the large amount of magical power in his body. This was a dual incantation, and Grima feared Lloyd might destroy the kingdom. But instead, Lloyd cast the spell into the sky, frightening the entire kingdom. Meanwhile, Amber's attendants wondered why he was paying so much attention to Lloyd. Amber explained that Lloyd's magic had grazed all the targets perfectly during practice, proving his immense talent and potential to become a great sage in the future. Therefore, Amber hoped Lloyd would help him once he became king. Suddenly, everyone noticed that the sky had darkened, even though it was daytime. Grima panicked, realizing that Lloyd's spell had blown away the sky, turning day into night. Lloyd himself was scared and tried desperately to find a way to restore the sky to normal. When the sky finally returned to daylight, Grima was amazed at Lloyd's power. Though Grima was merely Lloyd's pet, he had to take care of him, especially when Lloyd woke up. Sometimes Grima was angry but endured the situation secretly, contemplating taking over Lloyd's body in the future. Later, Grima read a news article about the huge hole in the sky caused by Lloyd's spell. However, Lloyd only cared about news of brave adventurers who had conquered many dungeons and brought back gold, jewels, and high-level magical items. Motivated by this, Lloyd decided to explore a dungeon himself. Knowing that leaving the palace would cause a fuss, Lloyd used a seed and cast a wood lemon spell to grow an exact replica of himself. Now Lloyd had to figure out how to escape the watchful maid Shifa. who was attentive enough to notice even slight changes. After some calculations, Lloyd set out to leave the palace with Grima. Meanwhile, the puppet created by Lloyd was impersonating him, so the servants wouldn't suspect anything. In fact, Lloyd had separated Grema's soul and placed it into the puppet, while Grema's body crawled into Lloyd's palm to become his second mouth. This allowed Lloyd to communicate with Grima from afar and keep track of what was happening at home at this time. The maids were happily watching the puppet Lloyd groom himself. Grima suddenly realized that since Lloyd was not home, it could cause havoc in the palace without anyone stopping it. However, when it heard Lloyd say that Grima was a kind-hearted spirit beast, it was embarrassed and immediately stopped entertaining such thoughts. Lloyd had been away from the palace for quite some time without finding a dungeon when he suddenly noticed a group of monsters chasing a girl below. Lloyd feared the girl would be killed, but to his surprise, she turned to fight them. With just one punch, she eliminated the first monster, and the others only needed a single kick to be sent. Flying. Lloyd observed from afar as the girl performed a powerful skill that caused an enemy to completely disappear. He soon realized she was a martial artist. Having read books about such fighters before, he knew that martial artists use a type of energy called Kai. Whenever they executed skills, Kai would escape and cause massive damage. Lloyd himself was eager to learn from the girl. Since he was a prince, he chose not to reveal his true identity. However, the girl had already spotted him hiding on the mountain. Mistaking him for someone with bad intentions, she rushed up to teach him a lesson. Yet, when she saw Lloyd's new appearance, she became overwhelmed because he looked extremely handsome. It turned out that Lloyd had used magic to combine his own appearance with Amber's, creating a completely new look. At first, Lloyd introduced himself as a novice adventurer. The girl, in turn, introduced herself as Tuan, a B-rank adventurer. Because of Lloyd's handsome appearance, Tuan had been admiring him from a distance, but hadn't dared to approach him until now. Tuan had been lonely for 18 years since men generally disliked strong women like her. Determined, she decided to make Lloyd her lover. When Lloyd invited her to conquer a dungeon together, Tuan immediately agreed. Once inside the dungeon, Tuan punched all the monsters to showcase her skills. But Lloyd's attention was drawn only to the glowing stones, leaving Tuan speechless. During their conversation, Lloyd learned that Tuan had no teammates and was somewhat curious about her Kai attacks. Seeing his interest, Tuan revealed everything she knew about sensing Kai and how martial artists practiced it. She even suggested Lloyd absorb her Kai through his mouth to experience it firsthand. Despite this, Lloyd had already begun practicing Kai according to her instructions. When Tuan noticed him struggling and looking uncomfortable, she grew worried, knowing that unfamiliarity with Kai could cause painful burning in the lungs. After some practice, Lloyd successfully activated Kai within his body. He was excited, believing this energy could be harnessed to transform into magic. Seeing his enthusiasm, Tuan promised to teach him more, and Lloyd happily agreed, much to Tuan's joy. Meanwhile, Grima was comfortably impersonating Lloyd to enjoy royal life. However, when Shifa arrived to invite the prince to sword practice, Grima panicked, thinking the situation was about to unravel. She desperately called out for Lloyd's help, but he was still in the dungeon. Back in the dungeon, Tuan defeated the final boss and opened the treasure chest. She assumed the low-level dungeon's reward would be insignificant. In contrast, Lloyd was thrilled. It was the first time he had seen a dungeon chest. Seeing Lloyd's mastery of Kai, Tuan felt proud and even considered telling her father to prepare for their wedding. But first she insisted on opening the chest with Lloyd. Suddenly, a blade shot out from the chest, forcing Lloyd to embrace Tuan to protect her. From beneath the chest emerged a monstrous skeleton-like creature known as a lick monster, which Lloyd recognized as the true final boss of the dungeon. Tuan panicked, but tried to remain composed, reassuring Lloyd not to worry. Tuan then unleashed a palm strike that pushed Lloyd toward the dungeon exit, helping him escape. The lick monster created glass panels to attack Tuan, forcing her to dodge continuously. She expended a great deal of energy just to break one of the panels. It turned out that lick monsters were intended for adventurers of rank or above, making its appearance in this low-level dungeon unusual. Tuan realized she had to buy time for Lloyd to escape. While still airborne, after being struck by Tuan's Kai attack, Lloyd created a protective barrier around himself. This barrier accidentally struck two nearby monsters. Meanwhile, Grima had lost connection and remained silent. Tormented by Shifa at home as she called out in vain for Lloyd's help, inside the dungeon, Tuan was on the verge of collapse from fighting the Lick. Just as she considered fleeing, the monster spoke. It claimed that Tuan's Kai attacks were too weak compared to magic. The Lick boasted that it had devoured many sages who had wandered into the dungeon, but Tuan was unworthy as prey. Lloyd, however, had managed to react in time to dodge the monster's deadly attacks. Tuan reminded the Lick of Lloyd's true nature. She explained that in her homeland, Kai was considered inferior to magic, but Lloyd praised Kai as amazing. This pleased Tuan greatly. She immediately rushed the Lick with her Kai, unleashing all the attacks she had trained so hard to perfect, breaking through its barrier. She even lamented that her intense training had left no time to find a boyfriend. Finally, Tuan used a technique called Void Heart Bullet to shatter the Lick's protective barrier. Exhausted, she collapsed. The Lick mocked her efforts as pitiful and meaningless, then launched an attack to finish her off. Just in time, Lloyd arrived, creating a barrier to protect Tuan, which amazed her. Determined to punish the Lick for mocking her, Lloyd prepared to strike as the Lick began chanting. Lloyd swiftly circled behind it, moving with terrifying speed that confused the monster. Lloyd continued to control his breathing to prepare his next attack, wondering if it was possible to combine Kai with magic. Encouraged by Tuan's words that proper breathing made anything possible, Lloyd took a deep breath, filling his lungs completely, though the Lick repeatedly attacked to break Lloyd's barrier. Lloyd broke his own barrier to increase his speed, emerging from it just as the Lick launched a flurry of attacks. Utilizing Kai, Lloyd moved so fast the Lick could not hit him. After absorbing enough air, Lloyd blended it with the magical power in his body, creating a new technique. Though it took some time to perfect, he eventually used it to cut through all the Lick's attacks. Lloyd continuously improved his technique, making it thinner and faster. He could launch multiple attacks without chanting, after exchanging blows. For a while, the Lick realized Kai was more powerful than its magic. Unable to defend against the speed of Lloyd's casting, the Lick was overwhelmed. Watching eagerly, Tuan saw Lloyd launch a decisive attack that cut the Lick in half, destroying its barrier. Lloyd returned to Tuan with a victorious smile. Together, they opened the reward chest and found a dull knife. Lloyd believed the knife contained mysterious magic and asked Tuan to give it to him. As the dungeon began to collapse, Lloyd understood that the chest had absorbed many treasures. He tried to take the chest with him as they left, despite Tuan's fearful protests. After Lloyd lifted the chest lid, the dungeon was completely swallowed, leaving no trace behind. Lloyd realized the chest stored power underground until it eventually formed a new dungeon. Tuan speculated that perhaps it was the Lick's insult that drove her to defeat him with Kai. But Lloyd simply replied that Kai truly was very powerful. After their meeting, Lloyd said goodbye to Tuan and flew back to the palace. Before partying, Tuan promised that she would practice diligently to become more interesting in Lloyd's eyes. However, Tuan completely forgot to ask for Lloyd's contact information. Upon arriving at the palace, Lloyd discovered that his pet Grima was exhausted and in tears. It turned out that Shifa had dragged Grima along to practice swordsmanship. Since the little creature didn't know anything about sword techniques, Shifa, believing that Lloyd's skills had declined, had taught Grima very strictly. Grandma blamed Lloyd for coming home too late. Meanwhile, Lloyd had collected many glowing stones and a chest lid from the dungeon. But all of these proved useless, except for a dull knife. Curious, Lloyd soaked the knife in hot water, smoothed its surface, and successfully separated a liquid layer known as magic marrow fluid, which enhanced weapons. He carefully separated this rare fluid into test tubes, shaking them thoroughly. Using water magic, Lloyd managed to isolate the formula for creating marrow fluid, silver oil, and magic powder. While oil and silver were easy to find, Lloyd planned to make the magic powder from the dungeon chest lid. Thus began Lloyd's journey to produce the weapon-enhancing marrow fluid. Later, he visited the king to request a bag of silver. Although the king could have given him gold, Lloyd only needed silver. Pleased by Lloyd's frugality, the king praised him, unaware that Lloyd planned to melt the silver in a pot. Next, Lloyd went to practice swordsmanship with Shifa. She promised that if he could win even one move, she would give him a bottle of oil. Despite combining magic with swordsmanship, Lloyd couldn't match Shifa's speed and was defeated without landing a single hit. Nevertheless, Shifa happily gave him the oil, moved by Lloyd's improvement since the previous day. She saw that, although only 10 years old, Lloyd could already combine swordsmanship and magic, and she believed he might someday lead the kingdom's Night Order. Not wanting to boast, Lloyd said goodbye to Shifa and began concocting his formula. With Grima's help, he combined all the ingredients in a heating pot and successfully created the enhancement marrow fluid. Afterwards, he asked his brother Amber for a large quantity of weapons to experiment on. Because Amber had many royal guards, the soldiers initially suspected Lloyd intended to misuse the weapons, but obeyed Amber's orders and handed over all the swords. Hearing the guards complain about Lloyd, Grima felt upset and joined Lloyd in enhancing the weapons. Lloyd carved the marrow fluid and additional spells onto the swords. The first sword broke due to excessive magic, but Grima encouraged him, reminding him that failure is the mother of success. After many trials and errors, Lloyd enhanced 50 swords out of an initial batch of 120. Though he had succeeded in enhancing 80 swords, his experimentation with extra ingredients caused more failures. Amber was impressed, noting that Lloyd's talent surpassed many kingdom mages. Though some royal guards dismissed Lloyd as boastful, one guard's sword surprisingly cut its scabbard in half, astonishing everyone. Amber personally received a carefully enhanced sword from Lloyd and invited him to test its power on a hunting trip at dawn the next day. Before the city awoke, Lloyd's group, including Prince Amber and Shifa, set out to hunt monsters in a dangerous forest. While villagers worked in the rice fields, Lloyd felt excited on his first visit to the monster territory. Amber noticed Shifa stayed close to Lloyd, teasing her about having special feelings for him. Shifa suddenly drew her sword, frightening Amber, but explained she had sensed a pack of Kubo wolves nearby. Lloyd, trained by Tuan to sense Kai, had also spotted the wolves but pretended not to notice. Thanks to the enhanced swords, the group quickly cut the monsters in half, impressing the soldiers who used the weapons for the first time. Amber proudly praised Lloyd for his skill, while Shifo's sword was not enhanced, also fought fiercely, cutting down numerous monsters. When a monster charged at Lloyd, Tuan appeared, kicking its muzzle away. Lloyd pretended not to recognize Tuan at first, but she approached him, sensing familiarity. Fearing exposure, Lloyd tried to avoid revealing his identity through Kai. Meanwhile, Shifa became jealous, seeing Tuan so close to Lloyd. The two girls nearly fought until Amber intervened. That evening, the group camped by a forest lake. When Amber introduced himself to Tuan, she was delighted, noticing Amber's resemblance to someone she had known before and recognizing Lloyd's similar Kai energy. Afraid of discovery, Lloyd tried to avoid Tuan. When he attempted to enter his tent to sleep, Shifa demanded to share his tent for protection, leading to a quarrel between Shifa and Tuan, who nearly attacked each other. Taking advantage of the chaos, Lloyd went to talk with Amber, who remarked that Lloyd was lucky to have two girls fighting over him. Even Grima agreed Lloyd was quite attractive. Amber cautioned Lloyd to be careful, warning that jealous women could be dangerous. Indeed, the two girls, still angry, had knocked out all the guards. Tuan mentioned she had a mission to repair temple, and though Shifa wanted to drive her away, Amber insisted Tuan stay on guard since she could detect Kai energy. Suddenly, a giant bear wolf appeared, frightening the guards. Shifa told Lloyd to hide behind her while she prepared to fight the beast. Meanwhile, Grima noticed something strange about a ruined temple in the distance. Tuan unleashed a powerful Kai attack, sending the wolf flying, but it wasn't enough to kill it. Amber then joined the fight, using the enhanced sword to amplify his magic and unleashed a flaming sphere that finally roasted the wolf. Amber thanked Lloyd, saying the enhanced sword strengthened his magic. However, Grima realized the ruined temple held a demon seal, and the seemingly defeated wolf was revived by dark magic, summoning more monsters. From the wolf's mouth emerged a demon named Basru, who claimed humans had harmed his family. He ordered the monsters to destroy all humans in the area. Amber and Tuan fought relentlessly, but the monsters kept recovering, and Amber suspected their power came from Basru. Grima, familiar with Basru, knew that the demon could alter magic to control the bear wolves, making them believe Basru was their mother. If Basru wasn't eliminated, the situation would become critical. Lloyd asked Grima to teach him how to change the nature of magic instead of fighting. Tuan grew frustrated as Shifa stood watching without helping. Basru mocked humans as weak and insulted Shifa and Lloyd, claiming they were so scared they had wet themselves. This enraged Shifa, who asked Lloyd's permission to confront the demon. Shifa insulted Basru's family and blamed them for making Lloyd smell terrible, vowing she could not forgive them. She pushed her sword forward, ready to strike. Basru laughed, claiming that no matter how much Shifa cut the bear wolves, they would not die due to his continuous recovery magic, rendering them immortal. Shifa responded with laughter, telling Basru that foul mouths shouldn't talk too much. Enraged, Basru charged to kill Shifa, but she used her speed to cut off the wolf's limbs, stunning him. Though Basru recovered quickly, this meant the other monsters moved more slowly. This showed Basru was focusing his magic on the bear wolf's body, which he was hiding in. Amber recognized this and urged Shifa to deal as much damage as possible to help their group regroup. Meanwhile, Grima continued teaching Lloyd the complex technique of changing the nature of magical power. While it took Basru a long time to learn, Lloyd mastered it in minutes, even creating a fragrant flower, astonishing Grima. During this, Shifa tormented Basru, and when a normal sword no longer satisfied her, she borrowed another weapon to intensify her attacks. Shifa was overjoyed when she saw the sword enhanced with Lloyd's magical engravings. She was so happy that she cried. Seeing how important Lloyd was to Shifa, Basru felt threatened and threatened to cut him into many pieces. Quickly played a distraction card and suddenly rushed to bite Shifa. He believed she was finished, but Shifa remained standing, frightening him. She then used another enhanced sword to strike the wolf midair. Under the moonlight, Shifa switched to dual swords and executed masterful techniques from her clan. Beginning with twin dragons ascending to heaven, followed by flying bird, descending to earth, these were precise techniques that Basru could not defend against. Closing in, she unleashed a flurry of sword strikes that forced Basru out of the bear wolf's body. Finally, with her finishing move, she made him land hard. Though Shifa's fighting style was somewhat revealing, everyone admitted she was extremely impressive. Meanwhile, Lloyd had successfully mimicked Shifa's posture using the technique of changing magical power. Shifa then forced Basru to lick Lloyd's sword for daring to touch the prince. Despite being dominated, Basru refused to surrender and exhaled a dark miasma that caused Shifa great concern. Amber and Tuan had subdued the remaining monsters, but Prince Amber and the soldiers inhaled the miasma and fainted. Even Shifa was affected, left powerless, frustrated after his defeat by Shifa. Basru grew wings all over his body and unleashed a powerful punch that sent Shifa flying toward the lake. Although Amber had awakened, he was too overwhelmed by the putrid smell to help. After taking the punch, Shifa remained unafraid and continued to mock Basru's foul mouth. Enraged, Basru intended to finish her off, but Tuan blocked his kick. Now, Basru had another opponent, the girl who used Kai. Although exhausted, Shifa pretended she did not need Tuan's help. After speaking, she collapsed, weakened from exposure to Basru's miasma. Basru explained that anyone who inhaled the miasma would be completely controlled. Tuan, however, remained lucid because she had adjusted her breathing to counter the miasma. When Tuan launched a kick, Basru dodged quickly and grabbed her leg. Realizing her secret, Basru stuck out his terrifying tongue, but Tuan punched him in the mouth and used a technique called thunder suppression break to send him flying into the lake. As Tuan attempted to regulate her breathing, a monster controlled by Basru caught her. Basru boasted that his clan was full of handsome men and tried to entice Tuan to join. Using the miasma, he controlled her and had the monster swallow her. Having defeated his opponents, Basru bragged about killing the parents of the Bear-Wolf pack and using miasma to control them. Lloyd admitted that Basru was indeed cruel. Hearing Lloyd's voice startled Basru, as someone was still conscious despite the miasma, accompanied by a demon with a foolish appearance named Grima. Upon hearing someone call it stupid, Grima was upset but thought Basru was beyond help. Basru ordered the bear-wolves to attack Lloyd, who saw this as an opportunity to test his magical power. He created an entire garden of flowers, which enchanted the bear-wolves into thinking they were seeing their parents. To Basru's astonishment, the bear-wolves were completely enchanted. Lloyd then instructed the bear-wolves to release Tuan, who had been swallowed. Basru immediately used miasma to continue controlling the pack, but the wolves attacked Basru instead, furious that he had killed their parents. Lloyd was impressed by the wolves' coordinated assault. Basru went into a frenzy, mercilessly beating the bear-wolves. He then boasted that Lloyd's magic had no effect on demonic beings like himself. Lloyd recalled that Grima had said the same. He realized Basru was an experimental subject for Lloyd's techniques and that all demon skills were insignificant compared to Lloyd's vast magical power. Basru came to understand that Lloyd was the true demon. Lloyd created many barriers to capture Basru, preventing his escape. Though Basru hid underwater and swam like Superman, Lloyd's barriers followed closely, blocking his path. Lloyd explained to Grima that he could normally cast 20 spells simultaneously, more with Grima's help. When Grima entered Lloyd's hand, Basru's fate was sealed. Despite his extraordinary dodging, Basru was eventually trapped in Lloyd's gigantic multi-dimensional dome barrier. Exhausted from chanting spells alongside Lloyd, Grima listened as Lloyd recounted Basru's crimes, killing the bear-wolves' parents, using monsters to test his power and more. Lloyd planned to use Basru to test his advanced techniques. Basru's pleas for negotiation were ignored as Lloyd continued casting hundreds of elemental spells, some set to repeat for 30 minutes. Inside the barrier, a rainbow of magic intertwined with Basru's pitiful cries. When Basru fell silent, Lloyd questioned whether he was still alive, and was disappointed to find Basru gone after only 5 minutes. Lloyd withdrew the barrier to let Basru speak his final words, but noticed everyone had awakened from the miasma. He hurried to boast about the events, leaving Grima to converse with Basru. Said he lived happily with Lloyd and was accumulating power to one day take revenge. Basru transferred all his magical power to Grima. Though the demon believed revenge was still far off, Lloyd explained to everyone that a mage named Robert had defeated the demon, story they accepted. Upon returning to the capital, citizens celebrated Prince Amber's victory. When some showed contempt for Lloyd, Shifa silenced them with a glare at the palace. The king congratulated Amber and inquired about the adventurers Tuan and Robert. Tuan had set out to pursue Robert, believing the mage was real. Amber credited Lloyd's enhanced weapons for much of the success and requested the king include Lloyd among those eligible for the throne. The king warned Amber that doing so would create another competitor, but Amber cared only for the kingdom's welfare. The king agreed to allow Lloyd to compete. However, Lloyd refused the throne, explaining he was not free to be king and preferred playing and researching magic. He introduced a new friend, a white bear-wolf dog named Shuro, which had followed him from the forest. Lloyd marveled at Shuro's fluffy fur, and Grima playfully fluffed the dog's fur to keep up appearances. Shifa arrived, prompting Lloyd to hide Grima in Shuro's fur and announce the dog's name. Lloyd began training Shuro, who quickly learned basic commands like standing, sitting, and barking. Seeking to teach Shuro more difficult commands, Lloyd wrote a sequence of magical commands, but the dog responded erratically. Shifa suggested they seek a monster taming expert for advice and remembered someone with extensive experience, Ali. Although Lloyd disliked going there, he accompanied Shifa to Ali's garden, which housed many animal species. Grima wondered who Ali was and why she was formidable. Lloyd explained that Ali was his sister, the 6th princess of the kingdom, who loved animals and kept monsters. Ali rushed over to hug Lloyd, kissing him enthusiastically after many days apart, causing him to faint. Even Ali's maid Aries was upset by Ali's overenthusiasm. Ali praised Lloyd's pet Shiro as very cute. Shifa doubted Ali's understanding of magic or her ability to communicate with monsters, but Lloyd trusted Ali's skills and wanted to see her pets. Ali revealed that a high-level Bearwolf species named LaRue had been standing behind them. Lloyd was surprised that Ali could command the monsters without any gestures. He noticed that she had even taken Shifa's hairband without her realizing it. It turned out that Ali had previously ordered her pet Luru to perform similar actions, silently, which made Lloyd very curious. When he asked Ali to demonstrate her training method with Shiru, she revealed that the secret was love. She explained that any monster could understand their owner through love alone, and that her voice was enough to attract all the monsters in the garden. This left everyone speechless. However, Ali was annoyed when Ares jokingly remarked that one day she would become food for the monsters. Lloyd believed that. Like Ali, he could also train his pet through love and empathy. Shifa, noticing Lloyd's interest, began to fantasize about devoting her love to the prince one day. After some observation, Lloyd realized that Ali transmitted magic to the animals via telepathy. She had unconsciously connected her mind to them through magic. Thus, instead of giving orders, Ali only needed to imagine the commands to communicate with her pets. Inspired, Lloyd tried telepathy with Shiru. He signaled the dog mentally, and Shiru ran 3 circles around the yard before, barking once exactly as Lloyd had intended. Witnessing this success, Eris exclaimed that Lloyd was a genius at telepathy, but the princess insisted it was love for animals that truly mattered. Lloyd admitted that empathy was necessary to truly connect with and conquer wild creatures. Was pleased and hugged Lloyd, happy that he understood her secret. After the pet training session, Shifa wanted to practice swordsmanship, which worried Lloyd greatly. Even when Prince Amber requested Lloyd's help, Shifa was ready to fight for him. However, Lloyd preferred to accompany Amber, as he disliked sword practice. At that time, the 4th prince, Diane, sought Lloyd out to discuss engraving magic. On to swords. Diane was skeptical of Lloyd's abilities and demanded a demonstration. According to Amber, Diane had studied blacksmithing since childhood in a neighboring country and was deeply interested in magical weapon enhancement of his 2 brothers. Lloyd used enhancement marrow fluid as ink and carefully engraved magical patterns onto a sword with a pen. Although Diane initially accused Lloyd of trying to deceive craftsmen, she was rendered speechless when the sword became noticeably lighter and more powerful after his work. Diane was proud of Lloyd and believed that together they could create the strongest sword in the world. His plan was to engrave magic directly onto swords during forging. Confident that combining a skilled blacksmith with a talented mage would yield the ultimate magical weapon, Diane dreamed of a future where all soldiers wielded magic swords. Lloyd found this idea fascinating and agreed to work under Diane's guidance immediately. From then on, Lloyd spent much time at Diane's forge. Diane eagerly anticipated the day she could wield a sword capable of slashing fire. After some attempts, Lloyd was ready to embed the marrow fluid talisman onto molten steel. But he overloaded it with magic, causing the steel to shatter outside. Shifa and Shiru watched Lloyd's progress closely. Diane invited both into the forge for convenience. Lloyd felt discouraged by his failures, but Diane encouraged him, assuring him that persistence would lead to success. Diane also revealed that she had bought a large quantity of marrow fluid cheaply, so Lloyd had to use water magic to purify it. They discovered that the red magic powder, an important ingredient, was missing. Since Diane had never exterminated monsters, she did not know where to obtain it. Lloyd suspected that he would have to secretly raid dungeons to acquire the red magic powder. Shifa suggested hunting final bosses in dungeons to gather ingredients. Lloyd refused at first, fearing exposure of his secret escapes from the palace. However, after the recent monster incident, Shifa persuaded the king to allow Lloyd to explore dungeons for the sake of broadening his knowledge. Following this, Lloyd left the forge to accompany Shifa to the Adventurers Guild. At his first visit, Lloyd was impressed by the guild's atmosphere. The receptionist, Katarina, reminded him to register by providing his name and address. Next, he had to touch a crystal ball to assess his abilities. In his previous life, Lloyd had been tested by such a crystal ball and feared it might explode upon contact this time, so he suppressed his magic power. The test results showed that all his stats were low, except for magic, which received an A. Other adventurers mocked Lloyd as a mediocre rank E, but Katarina recognized his talent. His magic score was on par with the Silver Sword Princess, a renowned adventurer who had conquered countless dungeons. This enraged other adventurers who dismissed the idea of a Lorink kid matching such a legend. Shifa was indifferent to their mockery and told Katarina to assign a mission quickly. The guild leader came to persuade Shifa to join, but she cut off his beard with her sword. Katarina then revealed that Shifa was indeed the Silver Sword Princess, which silenced the crowd. At that moment, Tuan arrived at the guild to receive a mission. Seeing her, Shifa quickly took Lloyd home. Tuan confided that she had been searching dungeons for Robert for several days without success, and now wished to get close to Prince Amber to alleviate her loneliness. Shifa was uninterested in Tuan's romantic matters and demanded the return of Lloyd's cloak. After some effort, Shifa succeeded in retrieving it. Lloyd was impressed by Shifa's talent as an adventurer, although she admitted to having some unresolved cases, such as dealing with the Assassin Guild. The three of them, Lloyd, Shifa, and Tuan, then entered a dungeon to slay monsters. After a day, they collected a reward chest. Meanwhile, Amber visited Diane's forge to inform her about an impending military uprising or war in the capital. Diane panicked and wanted to accelerate magic sword production, but Amber told her not to worry about the war. His primary concern was fostering a closer relationship between Diane and Lloyd. Diane was advised to calmly continue her research, as her work would save many citizens that night. Lloyd's group returned with the dungeon chest, enabling them to successfully create the first magic sword. The next morning, Diane tested the sword at the training area. With a single swing, he produced a terrifying explosion that frightened everyone. The sword's power was overwhelming, vaporizing everything in its path. They named the sword after both Lloyd and Diane because the initial sword was too powerful. Lloyd had to reduce the fireball spell's damage. However, he noticed Diane seemed impatient in sword-making and was hiding something, while everyone slept soundly. Lloyd sensed someone sneaking into the palace. A girl wearing a black cloak moved mysteriously, attempting to infiltrate the palace unnoticed. Lloyd Swade swiftly intercepted her and created a barrier to prevent her escape. After greeting the intruder, he asked about her purpose, but she revealed herself and released a poisonous scent that paralyzed opponents. Lloyd inhaled the poison and tried to use a purification spell, but it had no effect. The assassin explained that no purification could neutralize her poison, which was special and unique to cursed individuals. She was known in the underworld as Zen, the poison butterfly, and had been cursed since birth. With a single kick, Zen broke Lloyd's barrier, impressing him. Before leaving, Zen told Lloyd not to worry because he had inhaled only a small amount of poison, which, while painful, was not life-threatening. Lloyd was unbothered, using Kai to continuously heal from the poison. Although he could have captured Zen, he let her go to follow her to the Assassin Guild's hideout. Earlier, Shifa had told Lloyd about 6 wanted members of the Assassin Guild, each skilled at concealing their presence and possessing special powers. Despite Zen's skill at hiding, Lloyd could sense her every movement and quickly followed her, with Shifa waking up to join but arriving too late. Meanwhile, 6 Assassin Guild members listened as Zen reported on the palace's mass production of magic swords, urging quick action. However, Gali, a man in the group, reminded Zen not to act as leader since the guild had no leader. Their conversation stopped abruptly when they detected Lloyd's presence. Realizing he had been discovered, Lloyd jumped down to greet them. Zen was astonished that Lloyd, or Lucid as she called him, had survived her poison. Since the guild's base was compromised, they decided not to let Lloyd leave. Lloyd, undeterred, dismissed his barrier and prepared to fight immediately. He adopted the 100-flower fist stance similar to Tuan's style. Babylon, a flexible and agile cursed member, rushed forward to engage Lloyd, forcing him to stay defensive. Babylon's rubber-like body allowed him to attack unpredictably. Crow, another guild member, snuck behind Lloyd and chanted a spell that made Lloyd's body heavy. However, Lloyd used a body enhancement spell to dodge a punch from Golly, who possessed a spider thread curse and immobilized Lloyd. Lloyd escaped by abandoning his clothes when the thread stuck too tightly. Teria, a girl with a wound curse that shared her injuries with others, closed in and attacked Lloyd with sword strikes. Yet Lloyd felt no pain and found her power intriguing. After her sword dance, introductions were complete. Teria expected Lloyd to feel fear, but he remained fearless, instantly healing his wounds. Lloyd then created 2 swords and mimicked Shifa's techniques, which unsettled the guild members due to Shifa's prior trauma inflicted on them. As Lloyd charged, the members scattered. Lloyd first defeated Babylon, though Babylon's flexible body lessened damage. While distracted, Crow's spell accidentally hit Golly, sending him flying. Lloyd then used Shifa's sword techniques to subdue Crow, who appeared badly hurt afterward. Next, Lloyd confronted Teria. Despite her wound-sharing curse, Lloyd did not hesitate to injure her. Finally, Lloyd unleashed Tuon's 100 flower fists, knocking Golly into a wall. Only Zen remained, trembling after witnessing Lloyd's power. Despite her fear, Lloyd invited Zen to demonstrate more of her poison. Golly intervened, warning Zen not to lose control, as her poison would harm everyone. Lloyd realized that none of the guild members could control their curse powers, so he decided to help them. Dodging Golly's hug, Lloyd struck him from behind. Zen angrily attacked Lloyd but was stopped by Golly, who was unharmed. Lloyd had cast a spell to help Golly regulate his magic, enabling him to control his curse for the first time. Although Lloyd was new to this technique, he was pleased it succeeded. Noticing his pants were dirty, Lloyd discarded them. Terry, another guild member, prepared new clothes for him. Lloyd extended the control magic to the entire guild, helping them manage their curse powers. Crow could speak without accidentally casting spells. Teria controlled her wound curse, and Babylon moved normally. Zen, though happy, pretended to be angry because Lloyd had touched her earlier. Now able to wear clothes comfortably, without spreading poison, she calmed down. The group organized a lavish feast to thank Lloyd. Meanwhile, Golly approached Lloyd with an important matter to discuss. The group had unanimously decided to ask Lloyd to lead them, but he immediately refused because he was busy researching magic. He did not even want to listen to Golly's story, finding it too long-winded. However, as soon as he heard about Jay, the leader with the ability to teleport instantly, Lloyd paid close attention. Before Golly could finish speaking, Jay returned to the base to greet everyone. It turned out that Jay could not control his teleportation curse, so he had been traveling around the world. He had even bought several souvenirs to give to the group. This time, Jay returned with an important announcement. He had decided to create a symbol for the Assassin Guild in the form of coins. From then on, the group would accept underground missions that the Adventurer Guild could not solve. After completing each mission, they would leave a coin at the scene as a reminder that the Assassin Guild was fighting for world peace. Everyone agreed, happy that the guild no longer needed to remain hidden. However, Jay still could not control his teleportation curse and was teleported away immediately after speaking. Lloyd was disappointed that he had not witnessed Jay's teleportation power firsthand. Golly then informed everyone about Lord Lordis's military uprising. At that moment, Jay sent a letter by teleportation, prompting the entire group to set out immediately. When Sheffer arrived at the base riding her dog, she found no one there, only a letter on the wall stating that Lloyd had gone with the Assassin Guild to Lord Lordis's mansion. After reading the letter, Amber was very confused, because the Kingdom of Salome and Lordos were tense, and he believed the Assassin Guild had joined forces with Lordos to capture Lloyd as a hostage. To make matters worse, Jafar had found evidence, sticky clothes left at the scene by Lloyd, fearing that his brother was being tortured. Amber and Sheffer were angry and demanded to set out immediately to rescue him. Previously, Jay had sent a letter by teleportation, apologizing for not contacting everyone for so long. He stated that the Lord's authorities were preparing for war, but he had defeated them and become the new Lord. Now, he wanted to invite everyone for a feast. Although everyone was happy, Lloyd felt something was off. He noticed the guild badge, attached to the letter, which had appeared suddenly on the table in front of everyone. The letter had been teleported very precisely. But teleportation magic was an inherently difficult spell that no one could explain. If Jay could use it so accurately, perhaps he had already controlled the teleportation spell. Everyone agreed and was happy about this, while Lloyd agreed to go with them to witness Jay's teleportation firsthand. Zen felt uneasy, but Lloyd encouraged her, promising he would take care of everything. After witnessing Lloyd's kindness, Zen developed feelings for him. Lloyd then took everyone to Lordo's at a terrifying speed. Soon, they landed near Lordo's to prepare to meet Jay. Although the flight was short, everyone seemed motion sick. While everyone rested, Zen decided to go into the forest to find something to eat. Abalon revealed that Zen had grown up in the forest and was trying to show off to Lloyd since childhood. Zen had accidentally killed her loved ones with her poison curse and had lived alone in the forest, till Jay brought her to the Assassin Guild. Seeing Zen's aggressive expression, everyone was concerned, but Jay encouraged her, promising to teach her properly. Jay had even fainted from sniffing too much of Zen's poison but decided to let her live with them. The group happily divided, tasked among themselves to support Zen. Gali took on her education. Babylon handled cooking, and Tur and Jay designed outfits for her. Eventually, they completed a black outfit that suppressed Zen's poison, allowing her to live comfortably with everyone. Jay also gave Zen a hairpin, which made her so happy that she cried. From then on, Zen considered Jay her brother, and the 6 guild members regarded each other as an inseparable family. After hearing their story, Lloyd wanted to meet Jay even more. Grandma was surprised to see Lloyd caring about others like this. Zen prepared a hot pot that looked no different from pig slop, but insisted it was the best food on earth. Terrier reminded Zen that Lloyd was a prince and couldn't eat such food. But Lloyd and Grima ate it deliciously, as Lloyd had eaten worse dishes in a previous life. Everyone tried it and judged it delicious. As the warm atmosphere surrounded them, Zen wished Jay were there to eat with them. Previously, Jay had informed the group that the Adventurer Guild was considering stopping the hunt for them. Everyone was happy to escape their hidden life, but Jay seemed unhappy. He admitted he had lied about being a wanderer. In truth, Jay was the 3rd son of the Lord of the Lordo's region. He had joined the group only to use everyone. Lordo's was under the cruel rule of Jay's family, preparing for war, but Jay did not want war. He needed everyone's power to prevent it. Zen was surprised to learn Jay was a wealthy young master. But no one blamed him, as everyone had their own paths and purposes. The group was ready to help Jay fight his family. Jay was touched by their feelings but decided to solve the matter himself, to protect everyone from danger. Although Jay's body was cursed, he had lived happily with the group and felt it was time to return to Lordo's to end the war. He dreamed of becoming Lord and promised to welcome everyone to live with him. After hearing this, Grima was moved to tears, while Lloyd, after eating his fill, simply fell asleep, much to everyone's surprise. Zen suggested letting Lloyd sleep while they scouted the mansion first, since Jay suspected his letter had been forged. Everyone agreed, but Grima, fearing danger, insisted on accompanying them. Upon reaching the mansion, he saw a luxurious noble feast with no killing intent, prompting the guild to enter. Grima wanted to return to inform Lloyd, but a dwarf discovered them and brought all 5 into the mansion for the feast. Everyone was bewildered. Just then, Jay appeared to greet them, but he teleported into commoner clothes, showing he had indeed mastered teleportation. Grima reminded Zen to greet Jay after their time apart. But Zen was so moved that she could only shed tears. Suddenly, the figure revealed itself as a demon lord with subordinates. Using Crow's curse power, the demon forced everyone to kneel, so strong that no one could lift their heads. He allowed his subordinates to consume them, to absorb their cursed powers. Grima attacked the demon to help everyone escape. Knowing the demon lord was extremely dangerous, but the demon teleported behind her, delivering powerful kicks that sent her flying toward Lloyd, who was still asleep. Hearing the noise, Lloyd awoke to find Grima panicking and reporting the situation inside the mansion. Everyone was bewildered, not understanding what was happening to Jay, but quickly realized they were surrounded by demons living parasitically in human bodies. The parasite inside Jay introduced himself as Wizard. From across the ocean, his purpose was to steal Jay's teleportation power. Wizard explained it took months to erase Jay's will, during which Jay had suffered greatly. Though Jay had begged Wizard to spare his friends, knowing Wizard targeted those with cursed powers, eventually consumed Jay's brain. With only a bit of consciousness left, Jay tried to log out and take Wizard with him. But Wizard used his power to restore Jay, forcing him to live in hell. Jay became depressed until his mind disappeared. Wizard recounted this, mockingly angering everyone further as he used Jay's voice. He then stomped on the hairpin Jay had given Zen, breaking it and deeply hurting her. He allowed his subordinates to eat the guild members to seize their cursed powers. Wizard noticed a magic suppression pattern on Zen's arm and questioned her about its origin and effect, but Zen refused to reveal anything, unwilling to betray her friends. In this life-or-death moment, Zen remembered Jay and their past together. Wizard kept pressing her, but then Lloyd's barrier suddenly surrounded the guild members, much to their surprise. From above, Lloyd cast a powerful spell directly at Wizard, creating an enormous crater inside the mansion. Lloyd declared himself the person the demon was searching for. The demon clan was astonished by Lloyd's power, while Zen was overjoyed. To be saved by him once again? After healing Zen's wounds, Lloyd urged everyone to flee quickly, warning that the demon clan craved the bodies of those with cursed powers, although Zen was reluctant. The group decided to take her with them, knowing that if she stayed behind, they would only hinder Lloyd. Wizard's subordinates believed that he had been roasted, but to their surprise, he was still alive and grinning. When they saw their master return, they became extremely obedient. Wizard explained that the Assassin Guild possessed skills that could even evade his detection. Therefore, he ordered his subordinates to capture them if they wished to avoid losing their lives. However, Lloyd was still present and refused to allow them to proceed. Lloyd then unleashed a powerful spell that caused Wizard's subordinates to flee in disarray. The Assassin Guild was awestruck by Lloyd's immense magical power. Now ready to punish Wizard for daring to harm his friends, Lloyd faced off against him. Two of Wizard's subordinates rushed forward to distract Lloyd, allowing Wizard to cast a technique that penetrated Lloyd's barrier. This surprised Lloyd, who hesitated, uncertain whether to take the hit or dodge. He chose to dodge downward, resulting in the two subordinates taking the blow. Using his magical appraisal, Lloyd realized that anyone struck by Wizard's technique would die immediately, as their heart would stop beating. Grima assessed that Wizard could self-generate magical power, similar to Crow's curse, but at a much higher level. Lloyd observed that ordinary techniques could be blocked by barriers, but Wizard's direct magical power penetrated easily, sparking Lloyd's interest in his abilities. Meanwhile, Jay's subordinates were running around in confusion, having lost their direction, which disappointed Jay due to their ineffectiveness. Grima explained that demons were usually ranked according to their power. Those running below were ranked at the lowest level, rank 10. Grima stood at rank 3, while Wizard was above even rank 1, belonging to the royal class of demon nobility. His power was categorized as a great calamity, meaning even 100 rank 1 demons would be no match for him. Consequently, Grima advised Lloyd to keep his distance from Wizard and avoid unnecessary risks. Despite this, Lloyd was fascinated by Wizard's power and approached him, introducing himself as the 7th Prince. Wizard immediately recognized the 7th Prince as someone Jay had wanted to meet and was also aware that Lloyd wanted to meet Jay. Thus, Wizard understood that Lloyd would have to be eliminated first. He reproached Lloyd for helping the Assassin Guild escape, explaining that those bodies were what he coveted and planned to use Lloyd's body to compensate for his losses. After a battle of wills, they exchanged a few techniques to entertain themselves. Meanwhile, Tuan demanded that Katarina assign her a mission where she could work alongside handsome men, or at least work with Lloyd. Katarina was horrified upon hearing this, fearing that Tuan might devour a child like Lloyd. while Grima sincerely advised Lloyd to flee because Wizard's power was terrifying. Human magic to him was like ripples on the ocean's surface. While he existed at the ocean's darkest depths, Wizard demonstrated his power by shooting spears through Lloyd's barrier. Though the barrier was thick and capable of regeneration, Wizard forced Lloyd to continuously dodge the storm-like attacks. Eventually, Wizard teleported instantly to Lloyd, delivering a kick that deformed his barrier, then created a drill to attack from behind. Lloyd responded by creating a stone statue for defense. Citizens watching the high-level battle were deeply impressed. Suddenly, Wizard's subordinates discovered the assassin guild nearby and gave chase. Golly reminded Babylon to climb outside first to clear the path. At this moment, Grima was so frightened that it cried because it had to participate in Lloyd's battle. Wizard informed Lloyd that he could freely use Jay's instantaneous teleportation power, since demons could use cursed abilities if they possessed a body. Wizard then advised Lloyd to give up, warning that he could not dodge his next attack. Wizard teleported a spear behind Lloyd, giving him no time to evade, then teleported many more spears, making Lloyd resemble a porcupine. It below the demon clan frantically demanded that the assassin guilds surrender their bodies. However, Golly created a special mouse glue trap that immobilized them, and Crow chanted an incantation to press them down further, making the glue even stickier. Babylon did his best to open the city gate. As the gate was pulled open, Babylon urged everyone to quickly escape. But just as Crow and Zen got outside, the demon clan flexed their muscles to escape the glue trap. Seeing this, Teria decided to stay behind to buy time for the group. She used her ability to share wounds, causing the demons to injure their legs, then urged the others to run toward the forest and erase their presence. The demon clan, however, recovered quickly, forcing Teria to use her sword to continue disabling their legs. Though Zen wanted to stay and fight, Golly pushed her out and collapsed the gate. Golly stayed behind to assist Teria, who was struggling to handle the demons alone. Golly reminded Teria to use her strongest technique. The demon clan panicked as Teria prepared to sacrifice her life to destroy them all at once. When the demons charged together, they were stopped by Golly's mouse glue trap. Zen watched helplessly, distressed by the sacrifices, as the group had promised to enjoy freedom together, and now she could only watch as Teria and Golly risked their lives. Teria used her final sword strike to finish off the enemies. Wizard mocked the Assassin Guild's final efforts, believing they could not escape his grasp. He also belittled Lloyd, saying he had been sacrificed even before the others. Suddenly, Wizard realized that the figure stabbed below was only rubble. Lloyd then attacked with Grima's sword, but Wizard teleported away just in time. Wizard was surprised that Lloyd had used a clay substitution technique and was now wielding a mysterious sword. Lloyd admitted he was at a disadvantage and asked Wizard to relocate the battle to avoid causing trouble. At that moment, Prince Amber's army arrived, continuously firing hell flames into the city. The demon clan, unable to dodge in time, were immediately roasted. While everyone was confused, Shifa broke open the city gate with her sword. Amber, still believing his brother Lloyd had been kidnapped, ordered all troops to charge and find Lloyd at all costs. Tuan was frustrated because everyone in town had a partner, but she was alone. Upon hearing that Prince Amber was coming to Lordos to rescue Lloyd, she rushed there to assist the handsome men. The demon clan could not withstand the flames and were forced to jump into the water. Zen felt happy, thinking the second prince had come to rescue her. Earlier, Amber and Shifa had gathered the Assassin Guild for interrogation. Suspecting them of kidnapping Lloyd, Shifa demanded they reveal Lloyd's whereabouts, threatening that if they remained silent or lied, one person would die every minute. Terrified, the Assassin Guild confessed that Lloyd was fighting inside the mansion and that he had instructed them not to reveal his power. Babylon warned not to mention that Lloyd was fighting the final boss. Zen claimed Lloyd was only fighting an insignificant enemy. Shifa thought they were lying and prepared to punish the first person. Before she could act, Amber asked who had touched Lloyd's precious underwear. Upon learning it was the bald man, both Amber and Shifa were extremely upset. Zen then admitted that she worried about Lloyd because he was fighting to protect her family. The Assassin Guild, hoping Shifa would believe her. At that moment, a desperate demon rushed over, but Ali intervened in time. Ali trusted Zen's words, as her pet could detect ill intentions. With the demon clan returned, Amber asked Shifa to go rescue Lloyd. Zen stopped her, insisting that Lloyd was fighting a very weak enemy and did not need help. Wizard then destroyed part of the bridge, blocking access, and the demon clan fell into the water, attempting to swim ashore above. Lloyd was pleased that no one could disturb him anymore, and focused on the unfinished battle with Wizard. He was still worried about those below. Amber ordered his soldiers to attack the demon clan with magic swords, causing them to scream in flames. Lloyd felt reassured to focus on his battle, knowing the demons were under attack. However, the demons were not significantly affected by weak magic, and recovered quickly. They even requested Amber increase the fire, as the flames were too small. Even Diane's flame sphere failed to eliminate them. Amber considered asking Shifa for help, but found she was no longer nearby. It turned out she had mounted Shiru and was attempting to enter the mansion by swinging on a rope held in the dog's mouth. Due to her size, she could only jump a few meters before swimming across the lake. At that moment, a demon climbed onto the bridge railing and suddenly attempted to slash Shifa from behind. She promptly drew her sword to block the strike. Both moved so quickly that no one could see their movements clearly. The demon proudly introduced himself as a rank 8 demon in the demon realm, and like Shifa, a sword master using the heavenly demon single blade flow technique. Shifa realized that the demon clan was divided into ranks and wondered if Basaro's rank was higher. She also noticed the demon's unusual hat excrement on his head, which upset him, as it was his fashionable accessory. Amber's army had been burning the demon clan for a while, but they were unaffected. One demon even circled behind Amber to ambush him, but Babylon intervened to save him. Amber thanked Babylon, though he felt Babylon was a bit cruel. Babylon explained that despite being an assassin, he valued life, but those possessed by the demon clan could no longer be saved. Even Babylon's leader Jay had died to them, grateful for Babylon's advice. Amber gathered courage to liberate the citizens. He enhanced his magical power using his magic sword and formed seals to create multiple hell flames in the sky. When the flames fell, the demon clan was completely incinerated. Although exhausted, Amber ordered his soldiers to use all their strength to defeat the invading demons. Viewing the battle as one of vengeance for the citizens, meanwhile, Shifa, dual swords in hand, engaged in a life or death battle with the short demon. Their swordsmanship was so fast it made onlookers dizzy. The demon's techniques came from the heavenly demon's single-blade flow, while Shifa's were from the Ili family sword style. When they clashed, their movements resembled dragons and snakes ascending to the clouds. Shifa switched to Wolf Fang, and the demon countered with Great Heavenly Dog. The collision of these techniques generated a strong wind. After exchanging blows, both were wounded in the legs, but the demon could recover quickly. Determined to take Shifa's body and use her Ili style, the demon employed a magnificent sword drawing technique to tear Shifa's skirt. He explained that the technique belonged to the body he currently possessed. Inheriting the memories of the previous practitioner who had diligently trained swordsmanship despite having scarred hands, Shifa had spent many years mastering her sword skills. But suddenly she leaped into the air and unleashed the demon's own heavenly demon, single-blade flow swordsmanship, forcing her opponent to struggle defensively. After witnessing this technique, he was amazed and puzzled, unable to understand how Shifa could use such swordsmanship. It soon became clear that Shifa only needed to observe a demonstration once in order to learn her opponent's swordsmanship. She then taunted the demon, accusing him of having a mind full of excrement, able to learn properly and only knowing how to possess other bodies. Though the demon was deeply upset, Shifa called Shiro over and rummaged through his fur to find something very special, the demon-slaying sword that Lloyd had forged for her. Shifa declared that those who relied on borrowed bodies could never reach the pinnacle of swordsmanship. She vowed to show the demon the results of her grueling days of training. Since her defeat by Basaru, Shfa had practiced swordsmanship diligently every day, often breaking swords because even the slightest force caused them to bend. She realized that if she continued using ordinary swords, she would never be able to unleash her full strength in combat. Moreover, demons like Basaru had very tough bodies, so regular swords could not cut them. However, that day Lloyd had brought her a new sword one. He had helped Diane forge and perfect. The sword was not enchanted with magic. Rather, Lloyd had focused solely on upgrading its flexibility so it could withstand all of Shifa's power. With this sword, Shifa could now cut down insolent demons without fear of breaking her weapon. Lloyd also advised her that because demon-possessed bodies were incredibly resilient, she would need to deliver a one-hit kill strike to eliminate them. Grateful for such a precious gift, Shifa hugged Lloyd and vowed to follow him for the rest of her life. However, Diane had given the sword a funny name, which left Shifa speechless. This time, she swore she would not disappoint Lloyd and would use his sword to slaughter the insolent demon. Despite this, the demon showed no fear. Instead, he recalled Jay's painful past, explaining how the demon clan had used Jay to turn the land into a country of war one, destined to be destroyed. The Assassin Guild was outraged by this revelation, and Zen was about to intervene. But Shifa stopped her, warning that interference would only hinder her. Taking her sword stance, Shifa declared that such a future would never happen. She rushed at her opponent and delivered 2 extremely fast sword strikes that cut him to pieces. Ultimately, her illy style triumphed with the single tiger claw technique to the chin. After days of torture by Wizard, Jay's hair had turned white and his spirit was broken, though he had accepted his fate before dying. Jay warned Wizard that he would not succeed in his goals and someone would definitely defeat him in the future. Curious Wizard asked who that person was, but Jay refused to say. Wizard then finished Jay by merging into his body. Upon possessing Jay's body, Wizard often saw memories of his teammates but paid no mind, as merely acquiring Jay's teleportation ability was enough. From then on, the Demon Clan planned to wage war throughout the country. After killing the demon, Shifa paid her respects to the original owner of the body, believing that the swordsman must have been excellent. Everyone around felt regret and believed that the liberated swordsman would be happy now. Suddenly, steam rose from the lake, startling everyone. Lloyd and Wizard had arrived to fight. The technique just witnessed was the Hellfire attack Lloyd had used. Previously, Lloyd had flown around the lake, dodging Wizard's demon spears while thinking of ways to counter him. Lloyd noticed that while the demon spears varied, their effects were identical. They could break through only a few layers of his barrier before losing power. Wizard could turn the spears into incantations, forcing Lloyd out of the barrier. His most annoying technique was the Shadow Wolf, which teleported demon spears for surprise attacks, forcing Lloyd to move constantly at high speed since one hit would kill him. At that moment, Wizard stood in one place, attacking from afar, tiring Lloyd and making him uncomfortable. Lloyd switched to offense, chanting to combine 2 fire element techniques. He created a giant fire monster that punched toward Wizard, who easily dodged using instantaneous teleportation. The monster's punch struck the lake, causing steam to rise and obscuring Wizard's location. Lloyd switched to sensing through Kai, but Wizard's teleportation was too fast. Grima warned Lloyd to keep moving to avoid the Shadow Wolf attack. Lloyd realized that Wizard only used Shadow Wolf when he could see his target. The steam curtain hid Lloyd, allowing him to approach unseen. But he had to get close to use his sword. Lloyd created many clay clones that simultaneously wielded swords and rushed Wizard. Wizard killed one clone, thinking it was Lloyd, but its wounds quickly healed. Proud and confident, Wizard believed he had anticipated all of Lloyd's moves. However, he was startled to discover that Lloyd's clones remained and the real sword had been given to a clone. Leaving Wizard unsure where Lloyd was, suspecting Lloyd was in the sky, Wizard was unaware that Lloyd stood right behind him. Delivering a full brunt of flames, Lloyd shuffled the clones randomly, preventing Wizard from locating him. Although Wizard healed quickly, he was trapped and confused. Unsure of Lloyd's true position, Wizard summoned thousands of demon spears to destroy the clones. And when he saw a boy using a barrier, he rushed over thinking it was Lloyd. But it was only rubble. Another deception. Lloyd used barriers to protect clones, further misleading Wizard, frustrated and disoriented. Wizard attacked clones incessantly, excited to face such a challenging opponent after a long time. Meanwhile, Lloyd circled behind him without a defensive barrier. worrying Grima, who feared Lloyd would be struck and killed. Previously, Lloyd had created a special magic absorption sword that could absorb opponents' magic to analyze their abilities. Even Grima was surprised by Lloyd's ingenuity. Now Lloyd used the sword to absorb Wizard's Shadow Wolf magic, cutting it off completely each time it was cast. Using invisibility to buy time, Lloyd studied the Shadow Wolf spell. His recklessness worried Grima, who considered Lloyd foolish. To risk his life for research? During this, Lloyd touched Jay's consciousness, hoping for a response, but only gained insight into teleportation and the Shadow Wolf technique. After dismissing the clone spell, Lloyd revealed himself. Wizard, seeing Lloyd slightly injured, boasted that Lloyd never had a chance and questioned why he struggled to protect inferior assassins. He proposed cooperating to rule the world together. Lloyd simply sighed, calling Wizard a fool. He explained that while demons might be strong from birth, humans were weak and needed to gain experience. Everyone had to strive for their dreams, and Lloyd's dream was to research magic, not to fight pointless battles. Enraged, Zor used Shadow Wolf to attack, but Lloyd struck him with Kai-powered punches each time he teleported, causing great pain. Wizard was unfamiliar with Kai and puzzled how Lloyd knew his teleportation points. Lloyd waited to see what Wizard would do next, suspecting his techniques were borrowed from others. Wizard dismissed Lloyd's tactics as luck and bragging. But Lloyd reminded him of Jay's dying words that he would be defeated. Infuriated, Wizard teleported wildly but was repeatedly hit by Lloyd's kicks, unable to retaliate. No matter where Wizard teleported, Lloyd was always there to strike. Causing him to cry out in pain, Lloyd then unleashed a powerful dual chanting fire technique. Unable to dodge, Wizard was blasted into a pool of lava. Realizing he would burn to ashes if he fell, Wizard teleported again, only to be kicked into the sky by Lloyd, as Lloyd continued to pummel Wizard. He recalled his previous life and wondered who had created the magic books he studied. He longed to meet Jay to talk with him someday. Now beaten and unable to fight back, Wizard's anger surged. He unleashed his strongest secret technique, a Black Death Ball, capable of annihilating everything it touched. Despite the immense effort required, Lloyd casually waved his hand, dissipating the ball into nothingness. Confused, Wizard realized Lloyd had created another Black Death Ball to neutralize his attack. Frustrated, Wizard insisted his technique could not be so easily countered. Unbeknownst to him, Lloyd had extensively researched space element magic and knew the Black Death Ball vaporized a specific area of space. Lloyd had even experimented by creating dozens of these balls at once, discovering that when they touched, they neutralized each other automatically. Wizard was left speechless by this revelation and angrily called Lloyd a stinky bug who only boasted. He refused to believe that the pinnacle techniques of demons could be so easily countered. Lloyd was annoyed by Wizard's incessant talking and did not believe in Wizard's power. However, when Wizard suddenly approached him, he was terrified upon sensing Lloyd's magical strength. Lloyd created a series of Black Death Balls that relentlessly pursued Wizard. No matter where Wizard teleported, the Death Balls followed him without fail. Meanwhile, the demon clan below was blinded by a bone curtain, allowing Shifa and the others to cut down the enemies one by one. Zen used her poisoning ability and warned everyone to keep their distance. However, Shifa suspected that Zen was merely showing off. At that moment, Amber realized it was already morning, yet the sun had not appeared. Though the clock struck 6, the sky remained pitch black, a consequence of Lloyd's technique affecting the surrounding space. Lloyd had trapped Wizard inside a Black Death Ball, and Wizard struggled to escape, knowing that if caught, recovery would be impossible. Desperate, Wizard abandoned Jay's body, but Jay's body had stiffened and was completely immobilized. With no other option, Wizard pretended to be Jay and begged Lloyd for forgiveness. Also pleaded with Jay's teammates to intervene, but Lloyd coldly created a second death ball that crushed the demon. When the two balls collided, they neutralized each other and evaporated instantly, as the sky brightened once again. Jay appeared to express his gratitude to Lloyd before gradually disappearing with a radiant smile. Everyone was astonished to see the sun shining again. Zen, still able to see Jay, recalled his past words. Jay had said that the seventh prince was the strongest person in the kingdom because on the day he was born, the king's castle had a brilliant fireworks display. Rumor had it that the seventh prince's magic had pierced a massive hole in the palace. Jay believed that a child with such formidable magic would remove the curse plaguing their group. They had all promised that if the story was true, they would serve the seventh prince for life. Zen was glad that Jay's prediction had come true. Although Jay was no longer alive, Lloyd and Grima had prepared a grave for Jay, but it was only a formal marker since Jay's body had been swallowed by the void during the battle with Whizzer. During the fight, Lloyd had deciphered the Shadow Wolf technique, which allowed him to predict Whizzer's teleportation. This made it impossible for Whizzer to escape the void ball Lloyd created.
Ow.
Despite this, Lloyd acknowledged Whizzer's strength and admitted that the Shadow Wolf technique was structured in a neat and understandable way. Before he died, Jay had completed this technique and taught Lloyd how to counter it, making the victory Jay's achievement rather than Lloyd's. Zen had heard all of Lloyd's confessions and was deeply moved.
Ow.
When she saw Lloyd alone, she wanted to thank him and express her wishes. But Prince Amber arrived first to speak with Lloyd. Amber admitted that he had heard the entire story about Jay, but noted that much of it was fabricated. So he did not fully understand Lloyd's true power. Although Amber recognized Lloyd as a kind person for wholeheartedly helping the Assassin Guild, he also pointed out that the guild had long lurked in the shadows, committing many evil deeds and even kidnapping Lloyd. Amber could not forgive them lightly. To atone for their past, the Assassin Guild had asked Amber's permission to serve Lloyd for life. Demonstrating their desire to reform, Amber asked Lloyd for his opinion, explaining that if Lloyd accepted the Assassin Guild, he would be responsible for preventing them from tarnishing the royal family's reputation. Lloyd agreed with Amber's assessment and promised to speak with the guild privately. He assured them that if they committed crimes again, he would take full responsibility. Everyone was impressed by Lloyd's integrity. Unbeknownst to most, Amber had no intention of making things difficult for Lloyd because of royal formalities. He cared deeply about Lloyd and encouraged him to voice any difficulties. After all, Lloyd was the brother he cherished most. At that moment, Tuan rushed over, thinking Lloyd was in danger. However, everyone stared at Tuan as if she were a strange creature, since the battle was already over by the time she arrived. Embarrassed, Tuan ran off, but Shifa caught her to prevent her from wandering around. Lloyd also believed the Assassin Guild possessed significant magical potential, and their leader was kind-hearted. He felt compelled to help them and thus forgave the guild. Together, they resolved to find a way to repay Lloyd. Later, everyone gathered for a small party near Jay's grave. During the feast with the kingdom's princes, some felt pressured, but Amber encouraged everyone to relax and enjoy themselves freely. Taking advantage of the moment, Tuan immediately provoked Shifa, while Amber offered wine to the Assassin Guild, inviting them to raise their glasses. Although initially shy to drink with the second prince, the guild members eventually became boisterous, shouting as if they were family. Tuan even hugged Jay's grave, crying and calling him a handsome, ill-fated boy. Amber enjoyed the lively atmosphere and hoped to host a similar party at the palace someday. Meanwhile, Teria, drunk, tried to approach Amber, who remained sober and refused her advances. Using her ability to share damage, Teria attempted to make Amber drunk as well, hoping to reveal his bestial nature. However, Amber was still upset over Lloyd's earlier underwear incident, so he sought Gali to settle the score. Following the battle, a hot spring had formed at the mansion. Everyone praised it as an incredible, escape-proof relaxation spot. Zen asked Shifa for permission to serve Lloyd in gratitude, coincidentally meeting Lloyd, who immediately agreed. Despite this, Zen remained self-conscious because the poison in her body could harm others. Lloyd advised her to focus on researching poisons and become a doctor, which touched Zen deeply. She promised to strive to meet his expectations, grateful for his acceptance after often being shunned due to her curse. From that day forward, life in the capital of Solium remained mostly unchanged. Zen became a maid inside the palace, learning from Shifa how to serve properly so she could take care of Lloyd in the future. Meanwhile, Prince Amber reported all events in Lordos to the king but concealed the fact that Lloyd had been kidnapped, preventing the king from questioning the matter. After the events concluded, Lloyd and Grima returned to the library beneath the castle. This place held many magic books Lloyd had never read before. Every day he came there to satisfy his passion for studying magic. Lloyd was annoyed by Whizzer's incessant talking and did not believe in Whizzer's power. However, when Whizzer suddenly approached him, he was terrified upon sensing Lloyd's magical strength. Lloyd created a series of black death balls that relentlessly pursued Whizzer. No matter where Whizzer teleported, the death balls followed him without fail. Meanwhile, the demon clan below was blinded by a bone curtain, allowing Shifa and the others to cut down the enemies one by one. Zen used her poisoning ability and warned everyone to keep their distance. However, Shifa suspected that Zen was merely showing off. At that moment, Amber realized it was already morning, yet the sun had not appeared. Though the clock struck 6, the sky remained pitch black. A consequence of Lloyd's technique affecting the surrounding space. Lloyd had trapped Whizzer inside a black death ball, and Whizzer struggled to escape, knowing that if caught, recovery would be impossible. Desperate, Whizzer abandoned Jay's body, but Jay's body had stiffened and was completely immobilized. With no other option, Whizzer pretended to be Jay and begged Lloyd for forgiveness. Also pleaded with Jay's teammates to intervene, but Lloyd coldly created a second death ball that crushed the demon. When the two balls collided, they neutralized each other and evaporated instantly, as the sky brightened once again. Jay appeared to express his gratitude to Lloyd before gradually disappearing with a radiant smile. Everyone was astonished to see the sun shining again. Zen, still able to see Jay, recalled his past words. Jay had said that the 7th prince was the strongest person in the kingdom because on the day he was born, the king's castle had a brilliant fireworks display. Rumor had it that the 7th prince's magic had pierced a massive hole in the palace. Jay believed that a child with such formidable magic would remove the curse plaguing their group. They had all promised that if the story was true, they would serve the 7th prince for life. Zen was glad that Jay's prediction had come true. Although Jay was no longer alive, Lloyd and Grima had prepared a grave for Jay, but it was only a formal marker since Jay's body had been swallowed by the void during the battle with Whizzer. During the fight, Lloyd had deciphered the Shadow Wolf technique, which allowed him to predict Whizzer's teleportation. This made it impossible for Whizzer to escape the void ball Lloyd created.
Ow.
Despite this, Lloyd acknowledged Whizzer's strength and admitted that the Shadow Wolf technique was structured in a neat and understandable way. Before he died, Jay had completed this technique and taught Lloyd how to counter it, making the victory Jay's achievement rather than Lloyd's. Zen had heard all of Lloyd's confessions and was deeply moved.
Ow.
When she saw Lloyd alone, she wanted to thank him and express her wishes. But Prince Amber arrived first to speak with Lloyd. Amber admitted that he had heard the entire story about Jay, but noted that much of it was fabricated. So he did not fully understand Lloyd's true power. Although Amber recognized Lloyd as a kind person for wholeheartedly helping the Assassin Guild, he also pointed out that the guild had long lurked in the shadows, committing many evil deeds and even kidnapping Lloyd. Amber could not forgive them lightly. To atone for their past, the Assassin Guild had asked Amber's permission to serve Lloyd for life. Demonstrating their desire to reform, Amber asked Lloyd for his opinion, explaining that if Lloyd accepted the Assassin Guild, he would be responsible for preventing them from tarnishing the royal family's reputation. Lloyd agreed with Amber's assessment and promised to speak with the guild privately. He assured them that if they committed crimes again, he would take full responsibility. Everyone was impressed by Lloyd's integrity. Unbeknownst to most, Amber had no intention of making things difficult for Lloyd because of royal formalities. He cared deeply about Lloyd and encouraged him to voice any difficulties. After all, Lloyd was the brother he cherished most. At that moment, Tuan rushed over, thinking Lloyd was in danger. However, everyone stared at Tuan as if she were a strange creature, since the battle was already over by the time she arrived. Embarrassed, Tuan ran off, but Shifa caught her to prevent her from wandering around. Lloyd also believed the Assassin Guild possessed significant magical potential, and their leader was kind-hearted. He felt compelled to help them and thus forgave the guild. Together, they resolved to find a way to repay Lloyd. Later, everyone gathered for a small party near Jay's grave. During the feast with the kingdom's princes, some felt pressured, but Amber encouraged everyone to relax and enjoy themselves freely. Taking advantage of the moment, Tuan immediately provoked Shifa, while Amber offered wine to the Assassin Guild, inviting them to raise their glasses. Although initially shy to drink with the second prince, the guild members eventually became boisterous, shouting as if they were family. Tuan even hugged Jay's grave, crying and calling him a handsome, ill-fated boy. Amber enjoyed the lively atmosphere and hoped to host a similar party at the palace someday. Meanwhile, Teria, drunk, tried to approach Amber, who remained sober and refused her advances. Using her ability to share damage, Teria attempted to make Amber drunk as well, hoping to reveal his bestial nature. However, Amber was still upset over Lloyd's earlier underwear incident, so he sought Gali to settle the score. Following the battle, a hot spring had formed at the mansion. Everyone praised it as an incredible, escape-proof relaxation spot. Zen asked Shifa for permission to serve Lloyd in gratitude, coincidentally meeting Lloyd, who immediately agreed. Despite this, Zen remained self-conscious because the poison in her body could harm others. Lloyd advised her to focus on researching poisons and become a doctor, which touched Zen deeply. She promised to strive to meet his expectations, grateful for his acceptance after often being shunned due to her curse. From that day forward, life in the capital of Solium remained mostly unchanged. Zen became a maid inside the palace, learning from Shifa how to serve properly so she could take care of Lloyd in the future. Meanwhile, Prince Amber reported all events in Lordos to the king but concealed the fact that Lloyd had been kidnapped, preventing the king from questioning the matter. After the events concluded, Lloyd and Grima returned to the library beneath the castle. This place held many magic books Lloyd had never read before. Every day he came there to satisfy his passion for studying magic.